So today we're going to talk about 5 different ways to prove the 2 triangles are congruent. Remember, congruent triangles means that if I put the 2 triangles on top of each other, that they will match up perfectly. All the corresponding sides and corresponding angles will be the same. So let's take a look at the first example here. So you can see that it's marked that the 3 pairs of corresponding sides are congruent. Now, even though to have congruent triangles, there's really 6 pairs. There's the 3 sides, 3 angles. You don't need to prove all 6 parts are congruent in order to have congruent triangles. And this first one is an example. This is called side, side, side congruency. If you can prove that the 3 pairs of corresponding sides are congruent to each other, then that means the 2 triangles are congruent. Okay, let's go to the next one. The next one, if you take a look, it's marked that a side and then the included angle, and then the next side is congruent. This is another method we can use. Side, angle, side congruency. You have 2 pairs of corresponding sides are congruent and the angle between them, right in order, side, angle, side. Next one, what you want to do is, I'm going to start with this angle here, and you want to go around in a circle when you get the order. So if you take a look, I'm going to start this angle M. I'm going to look at the markings in the triangle, and I'm going to go around in a circle. I'm going to go clockwise this case. So if you look at the markings, we have angle, angle, side, angle, angle, side. So if you have angle, angle, side, that means your 2 triangles are congruent. Now you might wonder, well, why didn't I go the other way? Why did I go clockwise? Well, this is the thing. It depends on what's labeled, and when you go around, you can't skip more than one thing. So if I go around, if I start at angle M and I go around counterclockwise, I would be at angle, I would skip a side and skip an angle to get to the next part that's marked. Do you see that, right? I would go angle, skip, skip, side. You can't skip more than one thing. So that's why I had to go around this way, and I would go angle, skip one side, which is fine, and then angle, side. So you can only skip one thing if you go around in a circle. So that will determine which way you go, depending on what's marked. Okay, the next one. We have an angle, side, angle. 2 pairs of angles with a side in between. So angle, side, angle. And again, you want to go around in a circle when you do it, right? So when I did it, I didn't go around this way because I would be doing angle, skip, skip, skip 3 things to get to the next part. No, you have to go the next closest. So it would be around this way, angle, side, angle. And the last one, if you notice, we have right triangles. Well, when you have 2 right triangles, okay, so you have right angles, take a look at what's labeled here. We have an angle, right angle, we have a pair of hypotenuses that are congruent, and then we have a pair of legs that are congruent. If this happens, you have right triangles with a pair of legs and a pair of hypotenuses that are congruent. It's called hypotenuse leg. Now, just because it has a right triangle, a right angle, doesn't mean you're going to use HL. You have to look then to see are the hypotenuses congruent and the legs congruent. By the way, that hypotenuse is the side across from the right angle. So these are the 5 different methods, and I'll show you guys some examples of how to figure out which one that you have. Okay, so the directions in the next set say first we have to state the rigid motion. It doesn't say describe it. It just says to state which one it is. We're just going to state reflection, rotation, or translation. So if you look at number 1, I would have, how to get, it doesn't matter which one's the pre-image and image actually, but how would I get that triangle on top of the other one? Well, I would have to rotate it. So we're just going to simply state a rotation. Now, why do I have this on the worksheet, stating the rigid motion? Well, because remember, you have to have a rigid motion in order to get the congruent triangles. That's what congruency is. You have to have a rigid motion. So now leading into that, part B says to actually list the congruent triangles. Okay, triangle ABC, doesn't matter which one you list first, is congruent to, now this is what's important. You have to imagine the rotation happening. I listed A first. Well, where's A going if we rotate at 180? Well, A is going to C. And if you rotate B 180, where is it going? B is going to D. And then if you, the last letter here, C, if you rotate C, where's it going to go? C is going to go on to A. So the order is important based off of the rigid motion that you have. And then when it says to state the triangle congruency theorem, this is from the 5 that we had up above. So what you do is you look at one triangle. Let's just look at this one right here, okay? Don't look at the bottom one at all. And just go right in order. We have side, angle, side. Side, angle, side congruency. So when we eventually write proofs, in order to prove triangles are congruent, you're going to have to use one of those 5 methods. Okay, so let's do another one here. So first of all, the rigid motion will be folding over CD, so it's going to be a reflection. And then you have to imagine the reflection happening to get the congruent triangles. So the first triangle, let's list the left one, CDA. And then imagine folding it over. What would C map onto? Well, C would just actually stay where it is, right? Middle letter I put D. Where would D go? D would stay where it is. And then the last letter A, where's A going after the reflection? A would map onto D. And then look at the 3 markings and go right in order. Remember, look at one triangle. How about we look at this one on the left here? So I have going around in a circle, but again, you can't skip more than one thing. So if I start with this angle, I'm going to have to go to the side that's marked right here. So angle, side, angle. Angle, side, angle, right in order. And if anyone's thinking, well, why didn't we do hypotenuse leg? It's a right triangle. Because the hypotenuses aren't congruent. HL, a pair of legs is congruent, not the hypotenuses, so that's why we can use this. Look at what's marked, angle, side, angle. Okay, so let's try one more together here. So the rigid motion, well, if you take a look at number 3, the top angle C, if I fold it over, would be on the top angle B, and it has, see how it has double markings, double markings. C goes to B. Well, the only way C can go to B is if you have a reflection. So if you just look at those markings, you'll see it has to be flipped over. You can't just look at the triangle. You have to look at the markings, because it looks like it could be a rotation. But if I rotate it, C would be on top of D, and it doesn't say they're congruent. So that's why I know it has to be a reflection. Okay, so congruent triangles, let's do the left one first. Triangle CEA, congruent to triangle. So fold it over. C maps onto B. Okay, then the middle letter was E. Well, E is going to just go to E. And then the last letter was A. If you fold it over, A would go to D. And then we look at our markings to get the last one here. So we're going to go around in a circle. Doesn't matter. I'll start with this angle here, right? Now, if I go around this way, I can't do it. I can't go around counterclockwise in this one because it would be angle, skip a side, skip an angle to get to the next marking, and you can't do that. You can't skip 2 things. You can only skip 1. So if I start at angle C, I have to go around clockwise in this case. So it's whichever way that you're only skipping 1 thing at the most. So it's angle, skip this side, angle, side. A-A-S. A-A-S. Angle, angle, side. And why don't you guys try practicing some of these problems here. I just want to actually skip down and show you what hypotenuse leg does look like. Hold on a second. Let me pause this so I can move it down. Hypotenuse leg is in this number 8. You see that you have right triangles, which you have to have. You have a pair of hypotenuses that are congruent, the side across in the right angle, and then you have a pair of legs that are congruent. So this would be an example of HL. 2 more examples on the back. If we take a look at number 9, you can notice that only 2 parts are labeled. We have a pair of corresponding angles, corresponding sides, but we don't have 3 parts. That's because some of the questions in the back, I want you guys to figure out what the 3rd part would have to be. Now, you can't just put in, whatever you want just because you think it looks congruent. You have to have a reason behind it. Well, in number 9, there's a pair of angles here that we've talked about many, many times before. These angles across from each other, those are called vertical angles. So we know those are congruent because of the vertical angles theorem, and that's how we can do this one here. So first of all, the rigid motion would have to be a rotation because T is congruent to Q, which is marked, so we'd have to rotate it. So we're going to put rotation to state the rigid motion. Remember, if it says describe, you'd have to say, you know, rotation of 180 about point S, but it doesn't say to describe it. Part B was, what was part B? The congruent triangles, that's what it was. Okay, top triangle will say TNS. Imagine the rotation happening. What's it congruent to? Well, T would rotate to U. N would, middle letter N rotates to H. And S would just be S. And then to get the triangle congruency theorem, I'm going to start with this. I'll do the top triangle here. I'm going to start with this angle T. I can't go around this way because that would be angle, skip a side, skip an angle to get to the next congruent part, and you can't skip two things. You can only skip one. So if I'm starting with angle T, I have to go around this way, counterclockwise. So it'd be angle, skip, angle, side. AAS. And we'll do one more together here, number 10. Number 10, again, is missing the third congruent part. So we've already talked about, you know, sometimes you can use vertical. And here's something else you can use. This will come up on the worksheet a lot. If two triangles share a side, see how they both share JK? That's called the reflexive property. We're going to talk about that more later in the week. The reflexive property is when two triangles share a common side or even a common angle, but we're not there with that one yet. So that's the third congruent part. Okay, so this one, how do I get on top of the other one? I'd have to rotate it. That's the only way to get side HG on top of side NK, because those are marked congruents, to rotate the triangles. Part B is to list the congruent triangles. I'll do the top one first. Triangle HGK, congruent to, imagine the rotation happening. It's a rotation of 180. H would rotate to N. G would rotate to K. And then the last letter listed K. K would rotate to G. Okay, and why are the triangles congruent? I'm going to do the top triangle, go in order. I have to go, if I'm starting with this side right here, I'd have to go around counterclockwise to get to the next closest part. The other way would just skip too many things. Side, angle, side. Side, angle, side. All right, so you guys should try finishing up the rest of the worksheet.